quick shout out to Esports Pools, in many senses my original patrons, the John the Baptist to your Jesuses, perhaps, if you like that analogy. Obviously supporting me in my career and allowing me the financial freedom to create whatever content I wanted. But I have now launched a Patreon page, and you'll find the link in the description box below. The concept being that those who follow my work and want to support me financially, should they choose to, are now able to, directly. Now, don't feel obliged to, especially if you have any kind of financial or life circumstance restrictions which would make it difficult to financially support me. Likewise, if you want to support me, even $1 is appreciated. Don't somehow feel as though to properly support me, you have to go up to a specific tier of reward, etc., or give a certain amount. No, any amount that you feel is reasonable is absolutely appreciated. That's actually part of why when I was creating the reward tiers, because I'm coming at this from a different perspective than a lot of people who are kind of burgeoning content creators who want to use the reward tiers and the goals to actually create their content database, series, concepts, etc., buy equipment, which I'm not really necessarily needing to do. Part of the reason why when I tiered the rewards, I made it so that a better and better rewards up to $100, you know, so there's a logical thing that you get in exchange for giving more, but I then reduced it massively after that, so that you don't really get much more for $100 and above, so that only people who have enough money to give $100 or more and really want to support at that kind of a level of funding can and will. I don't in any sense want to drain away all the funds from my fan base, or in any sense, at least to my in the context that I would view it as, unduly incentivize people who can't afford it to go for those higher tiers in the hopes of getting some shiny reward that is some sort of a one-off thing that they could never get otherwise, and therefore end up out of pocket. So as such, all of the cool video and written content that I will create as a result of the goals being hit and the help of the people who hit their different reward tiers will be viewable for everyone. Anyone who has given $1 or more will be able to potentially influence it, but anyone, whether they contribute to the Patreon or not, will be able to access all of this content that I'll be creating. Additionally, they just simply will be able to consume it. Whereas people who donate, that's more about unlocking some of the content via the goals, because once I hit certain goals is when I'll start to do certain pieces of additional content, and then getting to take part in it, getting to have some influence over it, or make a suggestion, or even sometimes pick from a poll what additional content I will create. The only exception to that being the goal that I set, whereby once I reach a certain amount, I will create a second Twitter account which will be protected and only patrons will be able to access it. But that's very much a side issue. It's not going to be generally esports related, what's going to be the content on there. So not really as big of an issue. Generally, everyone who follows my content will still be able to get all this additional content, thanks in part to the people who will be obviously supporting it via Patreon. Now, the goals that I've set, so I've explained what I did with the rewards. The goals are more about having a roadmap of where my content might or could head, additional to what I'm already creating, which I will absolutely continue to create and will, as has been before, be led by my own whims, my interests, my own motivation levels. I also created these goals because I had to go in a different direction with what I was doing with my Patreon, because I've kind of worked backwards. A lot of people start out as content creators and they need more money to buy equipment, or they need more money to be able to have more time to create content, or they want to make it a shiny reward that if they get more people donating to them, funding them, and then they hit certain goals, they will create additional content. But that's usually to build up an amount of content, a range of series and categories. I already have that because I'm already in a position where people do support me via other means within the industry. And obviously indirectly, people who watch my content and consume it support me. And so I'm already able to make most of the content I'm interested in making. This is a way to potentially be able to make some additional content that's going to be more tailored to people who follow my work and who are willing to financially support me. And also, I thought this would be cool if I added in some elements where, by getting to have some sort of suggestion or influence over this additional content, I'm not going to put it over my original content, it goes against my ethos. I thought it would create more of a community feel around my content, because at the moment I've just been putting stuff out there that I'm interested in, that I love, that I think's really good, and then it goes out to the entire world and anyone can view it, anyone can see it, and there's not really any sort of a crafted, cultivated community of people who are into my content. So I wanted to actually take that specialized feel I already have for my content, which I create for myself and have unapologetically stated as much and emphasized as much, not only in my esports industry Journalist of the Year award speech, but every time I've had an AMA, etc. But now the people who really like my work and who are in a position to financially support me at whatever level can have some degree of input in it, and we can have a back and forth, and we can see what comes out of this. Because 2018 for me, that's part of the reason I launched this on the January the 1st of 2018. 2018 for me is more about focusing on those who appreciate and support my content, whether financially or not, rather than those who have nothing but negativity and criticism surrounding it. Now, what's interesting here is there have been many times in the past where I've seen people with Patreon campaigns. People like Richard had them. Obviously, we've got one now actually for the By the Numbers podcast to resurrect that, since it used to be sponsored by a betting company. And people have said to me, make a Patreon, I'd love to support you. But one of the key reasons why I didn't in the past years when people recommended it is actually tied into that previous point of my old theme, which is, yes, I probably did get caught up sometimes too much in focusing on negativity or people who are haters, or as I dub them, anti-fans, because they tend to be people who religiously follow my content anyway and continually tweet at me, write comments, etc., reply to things on Reddit about my work. So I knew, coming from that lens or perspective, that if I made a Patreon, these anti-fans, some of them would donate, some of them might actually want to support me, but then they would decide that they were my boss and they could now make demands of me or use this as a vehicle to criticize me or a stick to beat me with. Likewise, some, no doubt, as I've seen with the By the Numbers podcast, wouldn't even donate, yet would then use the fact that there was a mechanism via which some people were donating and could potentially donate to then try and police what I did, what I said, what I thought. And that's something I wasn't interested in. And thinking of it from that perspective, I thought best just to avoid that whole quagmire, that whole mess. Also, it initially did seem somewhat like begging. Like, especially when I saw people who I think are kind of scum, quite frankly, like Esports Express, who quite frankly were using their Patreon as in, we won't do any of this content. We're not interested in actually doing it for the content itself, and it's not something we're really passionate about. But if you give us enough money, then we'll do it. So that's not what I'm doing with my Patreon. This is only additional content. All of the content I currently create, I would argue that I'm the most prolific content creator in the esports scene, is already going to be created, as was the original plan. This is a way to get additional content to support me financially and to potentially influence that additional content and have some kind of a dialogue, a back and forth with me about it. I've even come up with what I think's a kind of a fun name for this little sub-community I'm going to have of people who support my work financially, which is going to be the Skrilluminati. Obviously alluding to the Illuminati, people who, for whatever your take on their background is, in theory seek after some kind of enlightenment or the good of mankind or whatever it might be. That's the official story, at least. But we're going to be, obviously, with the whole Skrilla, that's kind of been part of what I built in my persona. So if you support me in this sense, you're one of my patrons, you are welcome to the Skrilluminati. So, in my career path, another reason why I didn't want to go a route that seemed like begging was I actually also, perhaps naively, thought, why have my fans or people who follow my content or are interested in similar things, like-minded individuals, why have them be the ones that fund me? Wouldn't it be cooler if they didn't pay anything, which they currently don't and won't for the content I already create? Wouldn't it be cooler if instead I could kind of be like a Robin Hood and trick these other people with more money and more influence and power in the esports industry? Not really trick them, but in this kind of a analogy I'm giving, to give me the money, which allows me to create the content, which then everyone can enjoy. I thought that was kind of a cool setup, and obviously still will be the model via which I create all my traditional content. But while that has worked fantastically well to differing degrees over the years, but it's working very well right now, and I'm far from starving. In fact, my life is amazing. I get to do exactly what I want, to live where I want, to be with the people I want to be with, to create whatever I want without any editorial oversight, thanks to the sometimes difficult but thankfully now rewarding choices I've made in my career and who I work with and who I partner with and where I publish. I'm in a position where life's great. This Patreon and the very concept behind it, the premise, is more about letting people directly support me as opposed to indirectly support me, which they do for the rest of my content. And in an age where I think it makes less sense to only have them indirectly support me, because one day maybe this income will actually be more of the main source of what is able to fund me and support me making the content that I currently make without needing this funding. Because yes, in the past, you had to be part of a big website to get traffic to your work, to get attention to your work. You don't currently have to do that in the age of social media, of Reddit, Facebook, Twitter. Nowadays, I bring the traffic to the sites via the quality and the popularity and the interest in my work, not the other way around. So this is not just about making money and increasing my earnings. It's also about creating a new and unique income source direct from the people who appreciate and can financially support my work, but up until this point didn't have any sort of recourse to. And also, I have to add in, while it's not an issue right now, in the age of scandals and this public mob mentality where people go after your livelihood, they try and attack the support network you have, which in more traditional sources of people above you in sort of an economic hierarchy means that potentially they can cut off your earnings or limit them or attack them in some way. Having this income source that comes from the people who directly want my content, support it, appreciate it, protects and in some ways diversifies my income to kind of ward away some of that behavior. So it also, you have to add in, you have to think in the modern context of the whole adpocalypse, YouTube, you never know which videos or when they might be demonetized and what might go on there. So again, this provides a way for people who like that content to make sure that nobody can cut off their indirect support that they would have wanted to give to me, but now isn't being given because they're actually supporting a big company, a publisher, but the publisher's deciding not to pay me. I also think it's pretty cool in as much as it potentially sets up, as you'll see with some of the goals and rewards, a roadmap of where I might be able to go in my career with my content and my career in general. Because you know what, one day, perhaps I'll start to limit events even further. I already did this year, last year rather, limit the amount of events I went to in order to have time to create content and to be at home and be fully rested and have proper food and the environment that's most conducive to doing work in what I call the content dojo. But one day, perhaps I'll limit events even further, or perhaps entirely. Maybe I won't go to events and be an analyst and an on-camera personality in that sense. Because you know what? Maybe the games that I am interested in will die out in that sense. There won't be one that's appropriate for me to be an analyst in. But I will always create content, most likely. As long as I'm still interested in the games which are being played, I will very likely always create content. And also, assuming I haven't, for some bizarre reason, moved into some other area that somehow captures my imagination more. Now then, circumstances, though, may dictate, alluded to some of the things in the past, that maybe I, under other circumstances, would move off camera or be out of the public eye and not create content, still work in the esports industry in some context. Now, currently, that's not something I want. So this Patreon seems like the obvious way to go to create a base of support that no matter what else happens is going to be there to ensure that I'm able to continue creating the types of content and additional content, actually, that I'm interested in creating and have created in the past. Now, a key element of this I've stressed is the ability to influence, to make suggestions, essentially to give me feedback. So first of all, I'd like people's feedback on the goals, on the reward tiers. You can do that best on the Patreon page, actually on the post I make there, but you can also do it on this YouTube video in the comment section, because that will then allow me to tailor the kind of specialized content I additionally create for people without ceding control entirely. And if you notice, a lot of the rewards involve suggestions. It doesn't say I'm definitely going to take that suggestion and do something with it, but it allows people to get in my ear, to give me an idea. And if I see good ideas, no matter who it's from, I'll certainly take them on board. And some of them I've no doubt I will use. Likewise, people will get the option to pick from a list. So I might have 5 things I want to do. They get to have a say in which one I will do. Also, whereas in the past, this is part of the reason why I actually thought this aspect of letting people have some say was interesting, is yes, typically I've been incredibly individualistic and I do specialize my content only to what I'm interested in. But with that said, if a site or a publisher or some sort of medium via which my work would earn income and then be published came to me and they pitched me an idea or a content type, if the price was right and the efforts seemed worthwhile, yeah, I would definitely take on board what they said. So in this sense, you guys kind of get to be collectively that site or that publisher or that medium, and you get to have that level of income by pooling together your own contributions, your own financial support, and then bring it all to my door. So there's a link in the description box below. Again, do not feel obliged to contribute if for whatever reason you don't want to support my work or you're unable to financially. Enjoy the free content as you always have. But if you do, I appreciate it. And here's kind of the premise behind what I'm trying to do and the additional content I would like to create and potentially may in the future. And to those who do choose to financially support my work, Welcome to the Skrilluminati, baby.
Hi, this is Gertrude and you're watching Torrent's YouTube channel.